August 21, 1942. Alligator Creek, Guadalcanal. Colonel Ichiki watches his lead scouts disappear into the jungle tree line. The sandbar stretches before them, white in the moonlight. Beyond it, darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, Americans. His hand rests on his sword hilt. Behind him, 917 men of the 28th Infantry Regiment wait in the humid night air. Elite troops. Veterans of China, Malaya, the Philippines. Men who have never known defeat. Ichiki has his orders. Retake Henderson Field. Intelligence reports maybe 2,000 Americans on the island. Poorly trained, demoralized. They will break when pressed by disciplined Japanese infantry executing a night attack. The math is simple. His regiment, the first wave, will shatter the American perimeter. The rest of the 35th Brigade will arrive by destroyer within days to complete the victory. Then the airfield becomes Japanese again, and Guadalcanal returns to the Empire's defensive perimeter. He believes this completely. What Ichiki doesn't know, his intelligence is catastrophically wrong. Not 2,000 Americans defend Henderson Field. 11,000 Marines and infantrymen. Not poorly trained garrison troops. The 1st Marine Division, raiders who've trained specifically for jungle warfare. And they know he's coming. 400 yards across the sandbar, Marine listening posts have tracked every Japanese movement for hours. Machine gun crews adjust their sights. Riflemen check ammunition. 37mm anti-tank guns loaded with canister shot, essentially giant shotguns, aim at the approaches. The jungle is silent, waiting. Ichiki raises his sword. The first Japanese soldiers step onto the sandbar. The machine guns open up at 75 yards. Tracer fire laces across the sandbar in interlocking streams. Japanese soldiers stumble, fall, try to crawl forward through the sand. More troops rush from the tree line behind them. The guns keep firing. Ichiki's men have trained for banzai charges, rapid advance, close with bayonets, overwhelm the enemy through shock and aggression. It's worked in every previous campaign. Chinese troops broke, Filipino units scattered, British colonials retreated. The Marines don't break. They've positioned their defensive line with fields of fire calculated to maximize killing efficiency. Every approach is covered. 37mm guns fire canister rounds that turn men into red mist. Rifle platoons pour sustained fire into any Japanese soldier who reaches the wire. Ichiki orders repeated assaults. His men charge again and again. The Marines kill them methodically, without passion, the way you'd clear brush. When Japanese officers rally their troops for another push, Marine snipers drop them first. By dawn, bodies carpet the sandbar. Ichiki pulls his survivors back into the jungle. He's lost perhaps 200 men, gained nothing. But he still believes he can win. The Americans fought well, surprisingly well, but this was merely the probing attack. Tonight, the main assault. His remaining 700 men will hit the Marine perimeter from multiple directions. Coordination, speed, the warrior spirit that has carried the Emperor's armies across Asia. He doesn't yet understand what he's facing. Doesn't grasp that these Americans have studied Japanese tactics, prepared specifically for jungle warfare, and won't panic when men scream and charge with bayonets. That realization comes later, when it's far too late. August 21st, 1942, 01:30 hours, Alligator Creek. Ichiki commits everything. His entire remaining force, 700 men, surges forward in the darkness. No probing attacks this time, full assault, multiple penetration points, overwhelming force concentrated on a narrow sector of the Marine perimeter. The Japanese come screaming, bayonets fixed, officers waving swords. Some troops fire as they run, others save ammunition for close combat. This is how the Imperial Army fights: speed, shock, steel. They hit the wire. The Marines are waiting. Again. What happens next isn't battle. It's systematic destruction. Prearranged artillery fires into the killing zones. Mortar rounds walk back and forth across the approaches. Machine guns positioned in depth, overlapping fields of fire cut down anyone who breaches the first line. Japanese soldiers who somehow make it through the wire meet Marines with rifles, shotguns, and a willingness to fight at arm's length that shocks the attackers. This isn't supposed to happen. Enemy troops are supposed to panic when Japanese infantry close for hand-to-hand combat. These Americans don't panic. They shoot you in the face at 5 feet. They use their entrenching tools as weapons. They counterattack immediately when you penetrate their line. Private First Class Johnny Rivers, 1st Marines, will later describe the night. Bodies piled 3 deep at the wire. Japanese soldiers trying to climb over their own dead to reach the Marine positions. The sustained roar of gunfire, so constant, so loud, that individual shots blur into a single continuous sound.
By 0500 hours, the assault collapses. Ichiki's regiment has ceased to exist as a fighting force. Survivors scatter into the jungle. The colonel himself retreats with perhaps 130 men. The rest are dead or dying on the sandbar. August 21st, 1942. Dawn. Alligator Creek. Colonel Ichiki sits in the jungle, sword across his knees. Around him, the remnants of his regiment. Men who fought in China. Men who believed themselves invincible. They're not invincible. The numbers are brutally simple. He brought 917 men to Guadalcanal. Fewer than 150 remain. The rest lie dead on a sandbar, killed by an enemy that was supposed to break and run. Marine patrols move through the battlefield now, cautious, weapons ready. What they find stops them. Bodies everywhere, stacked at the wire, floating in the creek, sprawled in the sand where machine gun fire caught them mid-charge. Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Pollock counts roughly 800 dead Japanese soldiers. His own casualties? 44 killed, 71 wounded. The exchange rate is catastrophic, not for the Marines. Ichiki understands what this means. His mission has failed completely. The Americans won't be dislodged by a single regiment. They won't be dislodged easily at all. Everything Imperial General Headquarters believed about American fighting quality, soft troops, no stomach for close combat, poor morale, was wrong. He tears the regimental colors into pieces, burns them, then draws his sword. What happens next, the Marines piece together later. Ichiki commits seppuku in the jungle. His adjutant assists. 2 officers, alone, ending their lives in the traditional way because they've failed the emperor. It doesn't change anything. The dead stay dead. The Americans control Henderson Field, and this is only the beginning. Because the Imperial Japanese Army doesn't accept defeat easily, they'll send more men, bigger forces, better planning. They'll learn from Ichiki's mistakes, or they'll try to. September 1942, Guadalcanal Jungle, 40 miles from Henderson Field. Sergeant Major Jacob Vouza moves through the bush quietly. He's a Solomon Islander, local scout for the British colonial forces, now working with the Americans. He knows this jungle. Every trail, every village, every place where Japanese patrols might hide. Today, he's looking for enemy positions near Tasimboko. The Marines need intelligence before their next operation. Vouza volunteered. He finds the Japanese camp, counts troops, notes equipment positions, memorizes supply dumps. Everything the Marines need to know. Then he starts back.
The Japanese patrol catches him 2 miles from Marine lines. They find an American flag in his possession, a small one given to him by the Marines. To the Japanese patrol commander, this makes Vouza a spy. They tie him to a tree, start asking questions. Where are the American positions? How many Marines? What are their plans? Vouza says nothing. They beat him. He stays silent. They tie him tighter. Still, nothing. The patrol commander's frustration grows. They have a prisoner who clearly knows valuable information and he won't talk. So they escalate. Bayonets, multiple thrusts, stomach, chest, throat. They leave him tied to the tree, bleeding, assuming he'll die slowly and perhaps reconsider his silence. The patrol moves on. Vouza doesn't die. He works the ropes. Hours pass. Blood soaks his clothes. His hands are numb. The ropes are wet from rain, from blood, from sweat. They slip slightly. He pulls, twists. His wrists tear against the bindings. The rope gives. He's free. Now he has to reach the Marines, has to warn them, because those Japanese troops he saw, they're moving toward Henderson Field tonight. September 12th, 1942, 2200 hours, Marine perimeter, Lunga Ridge. The sentry sees movement, raises his rifle, calls the challenge. A figure stumbles forward, falls, gets up, falls again. It's Vouza, barely recognizable, face swollen, blood everywhere. The bayonet wounds in his throat make speech nearly impossible, but he forces words out anyway. Japanese. Coming. Many. Tonight. The Marines carry him to the command post. A courseman starts working immediately. Plasma, bandages, morphine. The wounds are catastrophic. Throat pierced, chest punctured, stomach torn open. The courseman doesn't understand how this man is still conscious, but Vouza keeps talking. Through the pain, through the damage, he gives exact numbers, positions, the direction of attack, everything he observed before capture, everything the Marines need to know. Then he passes out. Lieutenant Colonel Edson listens to the intelligence, does the math. His 1st Raider Battalion and 1st Parachute Battalion, about 840 men, hold a ridge south of Henderson Field. If the Japanese hit in strength tonight, this ridge is the key terrain. Lose it, and enemy artillery can shell the airfield. The entire American position collapses. Edson adjusts his defenses, pulls in his perimeter, concentrates his machine guns on the likely approaches, tells his Marines what's coming. They wait. 2100 hours. Japanese artillery opens up. Mountain guns firing from the jungle. Shells crash into the ridge. Marines hug the ground in their foxholes. The barrage walks back and forth across their positions for 30 minutes. Then silence. Then screaming. Hundreds of voices in the darkness. The sound of men running through jungle. The Japanese are coming. Exactly where Vouza said they would be.
September 12th, 13th, 1942. Edson's Ridge. Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi commits 3,000 men to the assault, 3 full battalions. Coordination between units, artillery support, night attack, Japan's proven advantage. Everything Ichiki lacked, Kawaguchi provides. His men surge up the ridge slopes in waves. The Marines meet them with everything: rifles, machine guns, mortars firing directly into the approaching masses. But there are too many Japanese, too much ground to cover. The perimeter bends. A breakthrough develops on the right flank. Japanese soldiers pour through the gap. Hand-to-hand fighting erupts in the darkness. Bayonets, knives, entrenching tools, rifle butts. Marines fall back. The Japanese press forward. Edson moves calmly through the chaos. He's not shouting, not dramatic, just present. Redirecting fire, plugging gaps. His voice carries across the ridge. Nobody moves. We're holding this line.
A Marine captain runs up. "Colonel, we need to pull back." "We're not pulling back." The Japanese attack again, screaming, bayonets, officers waving swords. They reach the Marine command post. Edson himself fires his pistol at attackers 20 yards away. Corpsmen drop medical supplies and grab rifles. Cooks, clerks, radio operators, anyone who can hold a weapon, forms a final defensive line. The Marines hold, barely. Dawn comes. The Japanese pull back. They've taken massive casualties but gained nothing. Kawaguchi regroups, prepares for another assault tonight. He still has numbers, still has surprise attacks in darkness, still has the warrior spirit. What he doesn't have is air support, or naval gunfire, or the ability to resupply his wounded, exhausted troops. The Marines have all three. September 13th, 14th, 1942. Edson's Ridge. Kawaguchi attacks again at nightfall. His men are exhausted, hungry, but they come anyway. Discipline, duty, the belief that one more push will break the Americans. The pattern repeats. Artillery barrage, screaming charges, close combat in darkness. Japanese soldiers reach Marine positions, fighting with bayonets and bare hands. Men dying in foxholes, on ridgelines, in the jungle 20 feet from American lines. But something's different tonight. The Marines aren't just defending anymore. Edson has positioned reserve platoons in depth. When Japanese troops penetrate the line, these reserves counterattack immediately. Fresh Marines hit exhausted Japanese soldiers from the flanks. The attackers get pushed back, disorganized, confused. American artillery has the range now. Every approach to the ridge is pre-registered. When Japanese form up for another assault, shells land directly on them. No warning, no chance to scatter. And then there's the machine guns. Sergeant John Basilone commands 2 sections of heavy machine guns on the northern slope. All night, Japanese attacks flow toward his position. All night, his guns cut them down. One gun jams. He clears it in darkness, by feel, while Japanese soldiers close to within yards, gets it firing again. Another gun crew takes casualties. He drags the weapon to a new position himself, fires it alone until replacements arrive. Ammunition runs low. Basilone makes trips through Japanese infiltrated ground to resupply, brings back ammunition belts, returns to his guns, keeps firing. By dawn, Japanese bodies are stacked in front of his position. His gun barrels are so hot that they've discolored. His crews are running on adrenaline and willpower alone. But the ridge holds. Kawaguchi's second assault fails, completely. September 14th, 1942, dawn. Edson's Ridge. Kawaguchi sits in the jungle with his staff. The numbers are impossible to ignore. He brought 3,000 men. Maybe 1,500 remain combat effective. The rest are dead, wounded, or scattered through the jungle too exhausted to fight. The ridge still belongs to the Americans. His officers argue for another attempt, one more night attack, better coordination, fresh troops from the reserve battalion. They can still win. Kawaguchi knows better. He's seen what happens when Japanese infantry meet prepared Marines in defensive positions. He's watched his best battalions break themselves against American firepower. These aren't the Chinese troops who fled at Nanking. These aren't Filipino units that collapsed in Bataan. These are different. He orders withdrawal. The staff protests. Japanese doctrine doesn't accept retreat. The warrior code demands another attack. Victory or death. Kawaguchi overrules them. His men stagger back into the jungle. No organized columns, no unit cohesion, just exhausted soldiers trying to survive. Many don't make it. Starvation, disease, Marine patrols. The jungle takes more Japanese lives than the battle did. On the ridge, Marines count enemy dead. Over 800 bodies. Their own casualties, 104 killed. 278 wounded. Terrible losses. But the Japanese lost more. Much more. Basilone sits near his machine guns, hands shaking. A corpsman tries to treat minor wounds. Basilone waves him off. Other men need help more. Around him, his gun crews sleep where they fought, too exhausted to move, still gripping their weapons. 4 months later, Basilone receives the Medal of Honor. The citation describes his actions over those 2 nights: the ammunition runs, the gun repairs under fire, the refusal to abandon his position. President Roosevelt signs it personally. But that's later. Right now, Basilone just wants water and sleep. October 1942. Guadalcanal. Imperial General Headquarters refuses to accept defeat. They send more men. The 2nd Division, 17,000 troops, experienced soldiers, better supplies, proper artillery support. Everything previous attacks lacked. Lieutenant General Harakichi Hyakutake takes command. He studies the previous failures. Ichiki attacked with insufficient force. Kawaguchi lacked coordination. Both underestimated American strength. Hyakutake won't make those mistakes. He plans a coordinated offensive. Infantry from multiple directions. Naval bombardment of Henderson Field. Airstrikes. Simultaneous pressure that the Marines can't counter everywhere at once. But there's a problem Hyakutake can't solve. Logistics. The Americans control the sea during daylight. Japanese supply ships can only approach at night. The Tokyo Express runs. Fast destroyers racing down the slot, offloading supplies, racing back before dawn. It's not enough. Not nearly enough. A division needs tons of food, ammunition, medical supplies daily. The Tokyo Express delivers a fraction of that. Hyakutake's men arrive on Guadalcanal already hungry. Within weeks, they're starving. You can see it in the diaries recovered from dead Japanese soldiers. October 15th. Rice ration reduced again. Stomach constantly hurts. October 22nd. No food for 2 days. Comrades eating grass, tree bark. October 28th. Cannot remember last real meal. Too weak to dig proper foxhole. Disease spreads through the Japanese camps. Malaria, dysentery, tropical infections that won't heal because the men lack basic nutrition. Medical supplies run out. Field hospitals become places where soldiers go to die slowly instead of quickly. But Hyakutake still has orders. Attack. Retake Henderson Field. Drive the Americans into the sea. His men will try, because that's what orders mean. October 23rd to 26th. Matanakau River and Lunga Perimeter. Hyakutake launches his coordinated assault. Artillery pounds Marine positions. Infantry attacks from the south and west simultaneously. The plan is solid. The execution falters immediately.
Units get lost in the jungle. Coordination breaks down. Attacks that should hit together arrive hours apart. The Marines defeat them in sequence, one penetration at a time, always able to shift reserves to threatened sectors. The Japanese keep coming anyway. On October 24th, a regiment hits the Matanakau River line. Marines pour rifle and machine gun fire into the attackers. Bodies pile in the river. The water runs red. Japanese officers rally their men for another charge. More bodies in the water. That same night, south of Henderson Field, another Japanese force attacks through jungle so thick the men can barely see. They stumble into Marine positions. Fighting erupts at arm's length. Muzzle flashes light up the darkness. Men die without ever seeing who killed them. Basilone is there again. His machine gun section holds a critical junction. Japanese infantry, perhaps 3,000 men, funnel toward his position throughout the night. His guns fire until the barrels glow. Ammunition runs low. Again, he makes supply runs through enemy-infiltrated ground. Again, He keeps the guns firing. For 15 hours straight, his section holds. When dawn comes, Japanese dead carpet the approaches. Basilone's hands are burned from changing hot gun barrels. His uniform is soaked with sweat and gunpowder residue. He's killed so many men, he's stopped counting. The citation for his Medal of Honor will describe this night, but it can't capture what it means to fire a machine gun for 15 hours at human beings running toward you in darkness. Some things don't translate to paper. November 12th to 15th, 1942. Iron Bottom Sound. The Imperial Japanese Navy makes its final major attempt to support Guadalcanal. Battleships Hiei and Kirishima, heavy cruisers, destroyers, a massive force steaming down the slot to bombard Henderson Field and land reinforcements. Intelligence knows they're coming. Admiral William Halsey commits everything available: cruisers, destroyers, and 2 battleships, USS Washington and USS South Dakota. The naval battle erupts at night, close range, chaos, ships firing at each other across waters so narrow that torpedoes barely have time to arm before impact. The American destroyer screen gets massacred, 5 destroyers sunk or crippled. South Dakota takes electrical damage, loses power, becomes a floating target. Washington's radar keeps working. Captain Glenn Davis stands in the Fire Control Center watching the new SG Surface Search radar screen. It shows what human eyes can't see in the darkness: enemy ships, exact ranges, precise bearings. Kirishima appears on the scope. 8,400 yards. Washington's 16-inch guns open fire. 9 shells, each weighing over a ton, hit the Japanese battleship in less than 7 minutes. The radar-directed gunnery is devastatingly accurate. Kirishima's superstructure disintegrates. Fires erupt. The ship loses steering. By dawn, Kirishima is sinking. Hiei, crippled by earlier damage, goes down too. The Japanese bombardment force retreats. The reinforcement convoy turns back. It's the last major attempt to retake Guadalcanal by sea. The Imperial Navy has lost too many ships, too many experienced crews. They can't afford another battle like this. On Guadalcanal, Hidetaki's starving troops wait for supplies that will never arrive, wait for reinforcements that have turned back, wait for orders that can't change reality. The island is slowly becoming American. December 1942 to February 1943, Guadalcanal. Imperial General Headquarters makes a decision they've never made before in this war: evacuate. The word isn't used officially. They call it a strategic repositioning. The propaganda speaks of successful operations and tactical adjustments, but the reality is simpler. Japan is abandoning Guadalcanal. For the Japanese soldiers still on the island, this means survival, maybe. The evacuation happens in 3 runs: fast destroyers racing in at night, loading troops, racing back. No supplies, no equipment, just men. Many don't make it to the evacuation points. Disease has ravaged the Japanese camps: malaria, dysentery, starvation. Some soldiers are too weak to walk the distance through the jungle. They're left behind, given grenades or bullets, asked to choose their own end rather than face capture. The Americans don't realize what's happening at first. They think the destroyer runs are reinforcements. By the time they understand it's an evacuation, most Japanese troops are gone. On February 9, 1943, the last Japanese soldier leaves Guadalcanal. Total evacuated, about 10,000 men. They arrived as part of a 36,000-man force. The other 26,000 are dead, killed in battle, starved, diseased, or lost in the jungle. American casualties, roughly 7,000 total, including 1,600 killed. Terrible losses, but the island is theirs. Henderson Field remains operational. Its runways now launch American aircraft toward Japanese bases in the Solomons. The defensive perimeter that was supposed to protect Japan's conquests has a hole in it, a hole that will only grow wider. The Guadalcanal campaign lasted 6 months. It was the first major Allied ground victory against Japan.
It proved Japanese forces could be beaten in the jungle, at night, in close combat. It shattered the myth of Japanese invincibility. For the Marines who fought there, Guadalcanal becomes something else, proof they could face whatever the war brought next. They'd seen the worst: night attacks, bayonet charges, starvation tactics, naval bombardments. They'd held anyway. Vouza survives his wounds, returns to duty. Later becomes a sergeant major in the British Solomon Islands Protectorate. Receives military honors from both Britain and the United States. Lives until 1984, 42 years after the night he refused to die in the jungle. Basilone receives his Medal of Honor in May 1943. Gets sent home for war bond tours. Requests return to combat. Dies at Iwo Jima in February 1945, killed by mortar fire while leading his machine gun section. Edson rises to brigadier general, commands the 5th Marine Division, survives the war. But what he saw on that ridge, his men fighting in darkness against overwhelming numbers, holding because they refused to quit, stays with him forever. And Guadalcanal becomes the first word in a new vocabulary. Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. Islands where Americans learned to fight a different kind of war, where Japanese troops discovered that courage and spirit couldn't overcome firepower, logistics, and men who simply would not break. The jungle warfare that terrified Japanese troops at Guadalcanal was just the beginning. For them, it only got worse from there.